The agriculture industry as well, that's booming and there's going to be a lot of jobs in that area. Why wouldn't you want to try and support that industry by you create a driver or a pull factor, as they like to say in politics, a pull factor to study agriculture, knowing that you're not going to have to pay for that degree if you go and work out in a regional area to help us get to our $100 billion production target by 2030.
We're on the Flow Morning Show, and with me is Ricky Lambert in our studios. Morning, Ricky.
Good morning.
Well, we're exploring some of the policies that the federal government is putting out, and there's been some criticism of the government in recent times, but there may be a win here for them, particularly given the lack of health services in regions and particularly remote areas, and an idea that they've come up with which I think might have some legs.
Well, I think it's got some legs for country people, and people will be running out to country areas if they're young and they've just graduated from their university degree and they're a nursing graduate or a medical doctor graduate. This is an exciting initiative for young people that they will have their uni debt waived. It's quite a lot of money these days, $30,000, $40,000 if they practice in a regional area.
Yes, from January 2022, the federal government will wipe the university debt for doctors and nursing practitioners under some conditions that if they are in a remote community, they must work at least 24 hours a week for a period equivalent to half the length of their degree, the time taken for that degree. And this could be a lifesaver for a lot of small rural practices. We've heard recently of doctors leaving small rural practices and those practices just simply not being able to get another doctor. But can you imagine if you owned a rural practice and you had a stream of university degreed students, nurses and doctors coming out, playing a vital role in regional health and being there for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, look, it's an exciting initiative, I think, also for young people who come from a regional area, that they might be able to come home and get this kind of support to be working in their home area. The real question, I think, Wayne, in addition to this, is why not a young journalism graduate wanting to work at a regional media outlet like Flow FM, or indeed teaching? We've got teachers striking in New South Wales because they've got teaching shortages. Why limit it to just medical professionals?
Yeah, and that actually raises a really good point, doesn't it? If the government has, through its COVID policies, the mandates that have actually occurred in our country regions, the lack of staff that has led to, then surely this is one idea that the government can implement that would get practitioners back into country towns.
Well, look at the agriculture industry as well. That's booming and there's going to be a lot of jobs in that area. Why wouldn't you want to try and support that industry by you create a driver or a pull factor, as they like to say in politics, a pull factor to study agriculture, knowing that you're not going to have to pay for that degree if you go and work out in a regional area to help us get to our $100 billion production target by 2030.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make, because the Regional Health Minister is David Gillespie. He says these incentives will increase for people working in the more remote areas. So I guess the further you go out, the better it is. And I guess if we added this to, as you said, teachers and even journalists and so on, so that we can attract more people to country towns, then there's going to be a greater incentive to move to the country, to stay in the country, and of course to make sure that those services are fulfilled. One problem probably is going to be that the government's going to have to fund it, and if we were to extend it to teachers and other areas, there'd have to be extra funding for that. But if we are looking to grow towns and grow regions, like Bridget McKenzie, the Minister for Regionalisation, has said, then surely this is something that can be implemented.
Well, we'll be straight on the line to Bridget McKenzie asking that question about whether we can expand this to grow regionalisation. A couple final thoughts on this. First of all, do we need to grandfather the arrangements for those who, before this 2022 year, voluntarily went and worked in the regions and aren't going to get a cracker out of this scheme? Maybe it needs to be rolled back a year to the 2021 people. But also, it makes you think of the Whitlam era, where they got rid of university fee debt altogether as a concept, and whether this might be somewhere that Labor might want to expand and go, well, hang on, let's look at that across the board.
It's a very interesting time as the federal election comes up. The coalition looking to get more of the students out into our regional and remote areas. Looks like a good policy, and one we'll see whether Labor will match.